Amazon has everything for back to school. Zebra lunchbox? Check. Cool Adidas gear like t-shirts, shoes, and backpacks? Check. Triceratops folders and pencils? Check. Laser Cat t-shirts? Check. Get your back-to-school shopping done now at Amazon.com/back-to-school and enjoy free shipping on millions of items. No need to leave your home or hassle with crowds. Amazon.com. No better place to get everything back to school from A to Z.
Tonight. Alright! We're gonna have a TV party, alright! Tonight! We've got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews. Everybody's gonna hang out here tonight! Alright! We'll pass out on the couch, alright! Tonight! We've got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews. Don't talk about anything else. We don't want to know. We're dedicated to our favorite shows.
And once again, our favorite show is, of course, Orange is the New Black. This time, Season 6. Oh, boy. I'm your host, the Mandated Reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified. And this is TV Party Tonight. Joining me to discuss yet another season of Orange is the New Black, brought to you by Jenji Kohan and the good people at Netflix, is my cellmate, my prison bride. Ladies and gentlemen, he's Sean Coma, you're not. How you doing, Sean?
The fuck am I the bride?
I don't know. But I didn't want to say prison bitch and start this off all wrong.
I don't believe it. No sooner, a few weeks ago, do I make the comment that Jenji Kohan shows tend to run out of story before they run out of season, then a season of a Jenji Kohan show actually gets it pretty much letter perfect right.
Yeah,
it was really just about perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, there are some reviews that have been calling it aimless. I was just digging through some of those, but I will tell you this: somebody asked me today, if I could sum up my thoughts on this season of Orange is the New Black in a simple couple of words, what would those be? And I said soft reboot. We went all the way back to the beginning with new characters, to the point that Piper starts off almost as annoying, like a shade better, but not much. Almost as annoying as she was at the beginning of the season. The show really got back to its roots. It got back to what made it fun. It finally closed the loop on the last two seasons that kind of went off the rails and took it away from. Look, nobody going into this thought that a show about a life in a federal prison was going to be pretty, but I think you and I commented about the last two seasons that, I think for the sake of TV, they really turned up the heat in terms of, we have to show people, how bad things are and over dramatize things and blah blah blah, and they kind of got away from telling just a solid story. And in this one, this season brought back the fun of just having a good story with really fun characters, gritty characters that you could sink your teeth into, these being the sisters, and going from there. So I'm excited to talk about this with you.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also it kind of goes back to that sort of fun Civil War storyline that we got between Red and V, which yes, I thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah, so, I would say I think the second season was probably this coming up right beside it was probably the strongest season to date prior to season 6, and it was because of that. It was because of the Red V storyline. But as we do on TV Party tonight, we're going to talk about story arcs. We'll talk about performances. I mean, at this point, it's a lot of the same characters that we've been following in the series so far. But that's actually a good starting point. Right from the get-go, they kind of took the cast, halved it, got rid of those people, except for maybe a brief flash where you see Boo and somebody else laughing at, I think Beth Dover. She's getting her head shaved for lice.
Yeah, there was Boo. We kind of got some resolution on Brissette. There was, what was they said? They found Chang hiding inside of a hollowed out deer carcass.
Yeah, yes.
Because of course,
right. So outside of that, they got rid of the Flocka and whoever pair.
Maritza.
Maritza. They got rid of Maritza. They held on to Daya, obviously, and Flocka. So a lot of the cast that we had come to love were gone, and we got right back. We basically stuck with those who were in the pool at the end of season 5. So what did you think about that, Sean? Did you miss the old characters? Were the new characters kind of enough to keep you going? Were the main leads that they held on to, was that enough for you? I was just curious to see what you thought of it.
That's a fair question. The ones that we parted ways with, I was fine with, because once I realized they weren't there, I kind of came to grips that there was really no story left to tell with them. Really, how much further were you going to take Jones? What else were you going to do with Maritza or Chang? For that matter, what were you even going to do with Brissette? It was time. Their journey was over. So I kind of had no problem with them being gone. And to be quite honest, I want to say after a few episodes I didn't really miss them, but that would be lying, because the truth was it was addition by subtraction. Not to demean what were some otherwise outstanding performances, but I didn't really miss them from the beginning. And part of that is because the characters that were introduced were so damn compelling right from the start. You can pick up on so many different themes, so many different little arcs that, yeah, like you said, really made it feel like it was starting the show over again with some of the same paths in mind. And yet somehow after 6 years it felt astoundingly fresh. We even got kind of a new permutation on Piper and Alex kind of meeting up after Piper has been in Max and scared to death for a few days, and it's kind of awkward at first, but then it's all happy again. We end up with a guard who makes Pornstache look like an absolute pussy cat. Who's only about a shade more bearable in terms of personality than Piscatella was. It's a process of the guards meeting all these inmates for the first time. So at least a lot of them for the first time. So in a lot of ways, everybody is kind of sort of in Piper's shoes. I have to admit, I'm eating my words. I said they were out of fresh ideas, and god damn was I wrong.
It's funny, you bring up Weeds a lot, and I'm into the 4th season now, and I've read through and I know more or less what's going to happen, but I'm going to watch the show to the end, and I definitely know what you mean. When you say like Weeds is being a really good example of, it doesn't seem like they knew what to do, but they kept getting orders for new seasons, so they just went crazy with it. And I feel like that's what was happening with Orange is the New Black, and then it was like, okay, let's start over. We obviously can't do like a hard reboot on the thing. You know, we still need to continue the stories for these characters, but let's take it back to what the show was really about. And I like that, you know, the show is very much a Shades of Grey kind of thing, because obviously you have, I mean, let's not lose sight of the fact that our stars here, our heroes, are all criminals who have done bad things. That's not an innocent one in the bunch. And they've all been caught breaking the law. And then you have, the guards who would seem virtuous, but like all things in life, some of them are just there doing a job, doing the best they can, making the best of a shitty situation. Some of them abuse their power. Some of them are shitty people and are just a shade different than anybody that's in that prison. And I think that's just life, though. You're always going to have sort of this pendulum swinging back and forth between sort of the worst and best of humanity in any given situation. And I like that about this season, is that you saw some greatness in the inmates, you saw terribleness in the inmates. Amanda Fuller as Madison Battison Murphy, I think, is probably the best character that demonstrates, on the one hand, especially like in the flashbacks, you could definitely feel sympathy for this person with her situation and how she was treated. But then on the other hand, she's such a terrible human being. She's such a bully that it creates conflict. You have Alvarez, by the same token, who's one of the guards. And on the one hand, he's doing, fantasy inmate. As McCullough says, you're taking advantage of people you have power over and you're manipulating them. And he says, nope, not. It's like the whole thing is to not get involved. And I think it's another character who says, why we've never had a riot down here? It's because we get them fighting each other. They're not wanting to fight us. And there's logic to that. You don't want to admit it to yourself, and saying it out loud sounds icky. But there's a twisted sense of logic in directing people to focus on each other so they don't realize how bad their situation truly is and try to do something about it.
If you don't mind a minor sidetrack,
sure.
I'm glad you brought up McCullough right off the bat, because she turned out to be a character I was so glad they brought back.
Yeah.
The very instant they reintroduce her, and she's just so matter-of-factly and just sounding so exhausted at the same time, running down things like, oh yeah, I'm a Lyft driver now because I'm not making enough money, and also because I can't sleep after everything we went through anyway. And then she says later, she something like, I think isn't it implied that she lost her gig as a Lyft driver? Because she said at one point, turns out passengers really don't like to see you crying while you're driving them.
Yep, that's a line.
And it's something that's, I got the impression it was almost like kind of played for laughs. And yet it's the kind of thing where you hear it and you're kind of reacting more like the two guards who are just standing right there listening to it. And just kind of like, she points that out so with such a blasé composure, and yet that's pretty fucking terrible.
Yeah, that's sort of the heart of the show, though, isn't it? It's like, hey, that's funny. Oh, wait, that's icky. And you don't know how to feel about things because everything is such yin and yang in that show. Everything is 50-50.
A good way to put it might be, everything is funny until it's absolutely fucking not.
So we're kind of all over the place here, but I want to talk about somebody who started off as just kind of a side character, kind of a goof, and really rose to be probably one of the more interesting inmates in the main cast. And it's so funny that, in a show that has run as long as this one, I enjoy when this happens, where they kind of, the writers kind of look around at the cast list and they go, who haven't we really given a lot of screen time to? And they finally do, and they really shine in that role. That's Dale Seuss as Frida Berlin. She's, of course, tied to our other two new leads, who are the two sisters, Barbara Denning and Carol Denning, played by Mackenzie Phillips and Henny Russell, respectively. She's an integral part of that storyline, but she really, she had a lot of other stuff going on too. They paired her up with Suzanne for a lot of the season. They focused on her manipulating her way around the prison to get into Florida, so to avoid being killed by the Denning sisters, the Little Debbie murderers as they were called. Which, just as an aside, they've shown a lot of horrendous shit. Nothing quite unnerved me as watching them push the sister into the lake.
Right. Right.
I was horrified. And it's like nothing really. I haven't really been rocked by an image like that for years now. Like as far as watching a television show, you want a quick just. I know we're all over the place and we're like a drunk driver here, but just a quick word. How horrible was that?
Absolutely horrifying. That was, and don't get me wrong, we've seen some visceral things on Orange is the New Black, some surprisingly visceral things. Poussey being crushed comes right to mind. You can even kind of throw out there Piper's little breaking point at the end of season 1 when she goddamn beats Pennsatucky within an inch of her life. We just witnessed some pretty horrible things, but
never mind Orange is the New Black. You've got The Wire where they threw the one kid across the car and he's covered in cigarette burns. You've got
I've not watched The Wire.
Okay.
So
sorry.
I wouldn't know. But
any given episode of Oz.
Okay, let me put it to you this way. I know it's not going to top anything that you'll see on HBO, but in recent memory, I would throw out there the first season of Daredevil. Wilson Fisk absolutely losing his shit and turning a man's skull to pulp with nothing but a car door.
Yeah.
In fact, I believe, doesn't he cleave the damn thing off?
Or the season finale of The Punisher, where the guy truly becomes Jigsaw because his face has been shredded.
Oh yeah.
None of that compares to this.
Yeah, some of that, basically a lot of what was implied in Jessica Jones. Mm-hmm. No, it's hard to compare any of that to watching those two absolutely go off the reservation. I mean, it was pretty horrifying.
Yeah, I mean, credit to the sound editors for that scene to really focus on the girl screaming for her life, and the camera panning back to see the sisters very satisfied with their work. Like, ugh. So anyway, back to Frida. I absolutely love Frida in this season. Again, a lot of the stuff she does with manipulating Suzanne. The doing the old lady routine to try to get into Florida so she can get away from those two. Just she really started to shine last season where they gave her own arc, and as far as she'd been in the prison for so long, she had her little hiding spot. To this where she's such a crafty person, and then in the flashbacks, you see her selling out Carol for whatever her reasons are. And just how smart and crafty she is. She's a great character, and I have to give Dale Sewells a lot of credit for her portrayal of her.
Yeah, and Frida up to this point has been kind of a kindly, grandmotherly figure, generally pretty likable. Man, you don't like her much by the end of this season, do you?
It's hard. It's hard because, I mean, I think... Because when I think about reasons to not like her, I think about Black Cindy. And how both her and Black Cindy both sold out their friends to get better deals, to take care of themselves. I mean, look, we'd all like to believe that, we'll stand by the people that we love, but I think self-preservation does play a role. And, we may do some unsavory things to save ourselves, as we walk on top of our friends in the process.
Well, let's give Black Cindy some credit. Black Cindy at least felt serious pangs of remorse.
Yes.
For what she did.
Yes, she did.
You kind of got the feeling that if confronted over her betrayal, Frida would have just kind of responded with, "And?"
Yeah, well, them's the breaks there, cowboy.
You got a point, fucko? How about you let me know when you get to it? It was... And by the end of the season, speaking of characters' journeys coming to an end, we always wondered, at what point are we going to kind of see Piper's denouement? And it looks like we may have reached it.
Are you thinking she might not come back for the 7th season? Is that what you mean by that? Or what are your thoughts there?
Well, I mean, I'm not thinking we're going to have to get quite as convoluted as the ways in which we brought, say, Tasty back to prison now twice.
Mm-hmm.
When she looked to be on the cusp of getting out. Once because she was released, couldn't handle life on the outside, and evidently did something to get herself locked up again. And now because she's found guilty of second-degree murder and is set to go to Litchfield Max to serve a life sentence. But I think it would be, to put it extraordinarily mildly, knee-jerk contrived to do the same thing with Piper. Because, I mean, and you've already kind of tried to delay the inevitable anyway several times when she seemed to be on the cusp of getting out.
Here's what I'll tell you. Here's what I'll tell you about Piper. I don't think Piper goes back to prison. I think we've done that with Casey. We've done that with Voss. I don't think there's anything to be gained there. What I will tell you is, in real life, obviously, the woman who inspired the show wrote a book and became an advocate for prison rights. And I think that's what they do with Piper. I think that's the last story to tell with her. Obviously, there'll still be that connection there with Voss, and we've seen them together. How do they do when they're apart, kind of a thing. But I think overall, it's like that last line of the season. What are you going to do now? I think Piper spends the first part of season 7 trying to figure that out, and I think by the end of it, she's either with Caputo or without Caputo has become a prison's rights advocate, and and somewhere in there, she's going to write the book, and that's probably where we're going to end the series. Is I finished the book, and she's going to throw Orange is the New Black on the editor's desk or something like that.
I can see that, and that would be pretty satisfying.
Yeah,
that would be a good kind of full circle note to go out on.
I have to tell you, I started off this season really hating Piper all over again. You and I talked about Jenji Kohan's real talent for writing terrible lead women. Just horrid human beings. Where you're like, you bring up. See, it's fresh now with me, so it's my turn to finally bring up Nancy Botwin on Weeds. But you get this character who you can see her point. You can see she's trying to do right, but somewhere in there things become twisted, and she just becomes an absolute animal. And you're like, why am I even rooting for you anymore? You're terrible. And we've said that about Piper as well. We haven't. I mean, we talked about that with Glow in terms of Liberty Bell, where at first she started out as somewhat sympathetic, given all the things that Alison Brie's character had done to her. But by the end of season 2, you're like, you're wanting to just throw her in the river. And Piper, went a full 360 degrees with this, where we're right back to where we were with season 1, where I felt that for at least half the season I wanted to push her in front of a train. Especially, I mean, just so you understand where I'm coming from with this, they're all in max. They're all worried about getting sold out or possibly getting more prison time or God knows what's going to happen to them. Poor Di is getting the shit kicked out of her on a regular basis by the guards for what, her part in the one guard dying was. They have no idea what's going on, and singularly focused, as Piper always is, where's Alex? It's like the whole fucking prison could be on fire. Where's Alex? And it's like, and even some of the characters commented on how frustrating that is. And it's like, on the one hand, like we get it, we get you're in love with this woman, but there are more pressing issues here. Focus, woman, focus. So.
Well, and in the beginning, when they're all trying to communicate and all trying to get on the same page, they're passing the message around, and what is it like? Giant dead in the pool, something like that, and absolutely everybody else is on board that. Oh, okay, we're talking about Piscatella. We're all trying to get our story straight before they get us into separate rooms and try to get us to turn on each other. It's the first fucking place her mind goes. Oh my God, Alex is dead. Because giant must mean tall lesbian.
Put that on a t-shirt, Mindy. Giant means tall lesbian.
Fucking, it can never be about anybody else but you, Kenneth Piper. Absolutely not.
I was very close to fast-forwarding through some of that. I was like, I can't even with you, lady. But as what happens with Piper, she turns it around, doesn't she? Because I think when they started in with the kickball stuff is where we start to, there's a moment in the show, and it's critical, and it really does need to be talked about, where Piper looks back at her time in prison, and on the one hand, you can argue, well, that's Piper again. The world revolves around Piper, ego size of a planet, because she's like, she comes to the realization that she's made prison a worse place than was before she got there. Mm. And on its face, you're like, listen, lady, you are but an ant, on the planet here. Boy, is this thing bigger than you crazy egomaniac, you. Mm. But to another degree, you can look at some of her individual actions and how they've affected certain people in the cast and say, you kind of did. Your presence did not help in a lot of ways. And she finally takes a step back away from being solely obsessed with Alex, and secondly, looking into her own needs and wants, and says, I want to make this a better place, which is some of what she used to do in the preceding seasons, especially early on before they got beaten out of her. And so she has one thing. She just wants to bring kickball back. And even though it's this loaded thing where the two blocks tried to kill one another and all of that, she's like, let's just bring something back to bring a little joy into people's lives. And it won't even stop at kickball. Now it has to be outside, and it has to be on the field, and people need to breathe fresh air, and all of that. And that's where the show ends. In a nice, friendly game of kickball where everyone put their knives away and just had some fun in the sun. And
do you get... Now, in a way, and call this just a gut feeling, call it pessimism, whatever you will. But here's the comparison I'm going to make. Mark, did you watch the U.S. version of The Office?
I've seen neither version of The Office.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I'm the one guy.
Well, now I'm put to a choice of whether I want to make the personal comparison that could potentially ruin part of the show for you.
Listen, I'm probably going to watch Community and Parks and Recs before I ever get to The Office, so have at it.
Okay. Well, and this isn't a huge spoiler. You know that Steve Carell left several seasons before the show actually ended.
Yes.
After having watched the entire series, my belief is this. Michael Scott's farewell episode was exactly how the series should have ended. Period. It should have just ended there, because it has a perfect beat right there at the end of it. And, correction. It's kind of before this little coda with Will Ferrell's unnecessary, awkward, painful to watch character that stuck around for, I think, like half a season afterward. But Michael is at the airport, getting ready to, leave, start a family, pursue his future outside Dunder Mifflin. And he's saying goodbye, and he's finally kind of parting ways with the documentary crew, and he says something to the effect of, you guys are going to let me know when this thing airs, right? And then makes some kind of joke. He's taking off his mic, says, man, this thing's really hard to get off, and takes it off, and since he's not mic'd up anymore, you're just left with Steve Carell giving one last muted, that's what she said. And the camera kind of holds on him as he walks off toward the terminal. And the entire show, Pam Beesly, Jenna Fisher, has been doing seemingly everything in her power to not be there to say goodbye to Michael. Coming up with every excuse to duck out on his farewell party, not be around him. She buggers off to go see a movie at one point. I for some reason, I think I seem to remember it was The King's Speech that she goes to see. She comes running up past the camera, and the two of them have had this really interesting relationship the entire show, and you don't hear what's being said. All you hear is just the ambient noise in the background, and then you just see her latch onto him with the mother of all hugs. And that's kind of the last moment of the episode. It was so beautiful and such a perfect farewell to that central character. I have for years thought, why did you not just end the show there? Why did we have to go through the subsequent ardor of fucking Will Ferrell for about half a season or so, and then we got James Spader, and then we got Ed Helms heading up Dunder Mifflin. Just fucking no. Just right there in the airport, silent. That's what she said. Michael walks away. Big ol' hug from Pam. There. That's the end of your show. Just let it go out on that. I feel like if the next season isn't something that's on par with this one, I'm going to look back on this finale and I'm going to think of that moment with Piper being asked what she's going to do next and just not having anything to say, as being kind of like the final moments of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where Buffy gets asked almost that exact same question after she's seemingly saved the world for what could be the final time, and I'm just going to wonder, oh, Genji, that was so perfect. Wait, why once more could you not leave well enough alone?
Well, I'll tell you this: you and I talked before the season started that this is the longest year ever in Piper's. We're fucking 6 seasons, and she still went home early. She didn't even finish a sentence. So I feel like 2 seasons ago, Netflix came to Jenji Kohan and said, "We're renewing you for 2 more seasons." And then they got in the writers' room and was like, "Well, what do we want to do? Well, we have to finish up the riot storyline. We need to get it going in a new direction, And they're throwing all these ideas out there. And somebody at some point had to have piped up, like, we can't keep Piper in the prison for 2 more seasons. That's ridiculous.
No. She's got to
go
home. Piper, you got to go.
And so I would imagine there was a plan going forward. I mean, let's look at where, and I want to talk about the sisters next. So the sort of good transition point here, but where we're left at the end of the season is there's a power vacuum. The sisters are dead. You've got their lieutenants that are left. You've got Madison Battison in the 1 block, the blue block, and then you've got Daddy in the khaki block with Daya and Ruiz for that matter.
They are Ulysses Grant and Robert E. Lee.
Yep. And so the animosity that was bred between the 2 blocks is seemingly evaporated. There's no reason for that to go forward at this point if no one's pushing it. And so there's the idea of, well, do they go back to civil warring, or do they decide to just carve up the prison into territories and go about dealing drugs, in a happily, merrily, less stabily fashion? You've got, as we talked about before, so there's that story to tell. You've got the aftermath of Tasty's life sentence. I don't see. Here's the one character where I'm like, what is there left to do with this person? And I almost feel like unless they tag team him up with Piper and becoming a prison advocate, they might as well write him off the show, and that's Caputo, who I thought. Yep. I honestly thought like this was a great final bow for him. Like, don't bring him back. Just don't. Let him go to Missouri, or let him, just decide he's done with prisons and never see him again. Kind of like what they did with Healy, except for a brief cameo. What are you doing here? A very brief cameo. I don't feel like there's anything left for Caputo's character to say, and they've got, there's plenty to do there with Fig. So, yeah. But yeah, you've got the aftermath of Tasty's verdict, plus her inevitable confrontation with Black Cindy. You've got the aftermath of what happened with what's the name of her? She ended up in the shoe with Red.
Great! Now I'm drawing a blank.
Mendoza.
Right.
You've got the aftermath of what happened with Mendoza and Luschak and inmate, fantasy inmate. So there's still they left enough out there to I think enough for 10 episodes to wrap things up finally. Is it going to be like Oz, where like on the very last episode they were still starting new stories? I don't know. That was kind of the point of the end of Oz, where it was like the prison, even though they're all leaving the prison, stuff goes on. It never ends. Was the point of the ending of that show. Even though they had wrapped up some of the storylines, it was like, nope. That's not the point here. So I'm okay with them. I know your point was they had it perfect there, but I feel like there's still a little bit of Piper's story left to tell, and I feel like the work of prison advocates is something that I think is something that needs to be talked about on TV. How hard, let me tell you something, just as a personal aside. As somebody who works in the prison industrial complex, anytime I talk about, just in casual conversation with my coworkers, prisoners' rights, treating them like people, I get sneers. I get snickers. Now, that's not to say that they're all bad and it's all bad all the time, because even the people who snicker when I bring stuff like that up will still find themselves at some point saying, no, we have to be decent. These are people too. And certainly I haven't seen anyone being benignly neglectful, at least where I've worked, on the medical side, or even on the law enforcement side. To be perfectly honest, I think everyone tries to do their job and be decent. But you don't get a whole lot of warm fuzzy feelings of we must take care of these people because taking care of people is good. It's we take care of these people because that's what they're paying us to do, and we don't want to end up in jail ourselves, kind of a thing. And so I think the idea of Piper going out there and sharing what it's like to speak on behalf of people who there are no heroes for. There's no there's people typically don't advocate for them, and then when you do, you're laughed out of the room. That's something I think that needs to be seen on TV. So
no, I agree. No, I agree, and I say that as the son of one of those people who would have probably laughed you out of the room for that. Because as we've stated many times on the show, I was raised in a law enforcement family.
Right.
My mom, who is divorced from my biological dad, who currently heads up the University of Central Missouri Police Academy, even she, is still very much kind of a Blue Lives Matter type. Whereas my opinion of it is it tends to be a little bit more of a shade of gray of, yes, do I have infinite respect for law enforcement? Absolutely. You could not be raised the way I was and not feel that way. But at the same time, do I feel there are some problems that badly need to be sorted out? Oh, absolutely. And the same kind of goes for prisons, in my opinion. And that is that this show does bring to light a lot of the matters that don't get talked about. The one that surprisingly fascinates me is the idea that oftentimes prison personnel are not equipped to deal with the people that they're charged with both taking care of and keeping in line.
You don't know the half of it.
Yeah, I mean, well, and I do know from some minor experience in the sense that one of my former best friends, we're not on speaking terms and probably will not be again, for some reason, after his job at a newspaper fell apart, he spent close to a year trying unsuccessfully several times to get a job with the Missouri Department of Corrections as a guard. And finally he did. The running joke among myself and my friends became, we wonder if they didn't at some point just make a deal with him. Look, if we give you the damn job, will you go away? Will this be the last we ever have to hear from you? And, ultimately the thing is, it burned him out in extremely short order. I think he lasted about a year and a half. He barely passed his physical the first time around. The grind of the job proved to be mentally and physically too much for him. And that's because he was never a law enforcement type. He was never a military type. He was never anything remotely combative. The man wouldn't bust a grape in a fruit fight. But his dad was this half nuts ex-Marine who served in Vietnam, who kept insisting up and down, oh yeah, you know what you should do? You should become a prison guard. Yeah, you might enjoy that. You can make good money doing that. And the rest of us, every time he ever said that, both thought to ourselves and later said to each other, how fucking high is he to think his son is remotely cut out to be a prison guard? Because what it boiled down to, and it's kind of what you think when you look at some of the guards on this show, is these are the people who were charged with keeping track of potentially dangerous felons. This is the first line of defense if it ever hits the fan inside a correctional facility. And you kind of realize that, after watching this show and kind of coming to grips with just how many kernels of truth there are to it, is, man, it's kind of scary, but guards are kind of considered expendable, replaceable, interchangeable.
Well, isn't that how we got here in the series? You had that first iteration of guards, and as you were talking, you were reminding me of the one female black guard who was talking about Suzanne, who's like, we're not just babysitters. We interact with them. We're forced to try to understand them and deal with them. And we are, part of this being a profession is knowing when to be a hard ass and knowing when to be sympathetic and not letting yourself that necessarily be used as a duck in the meantime. There's a lot that goes into it that people don't even realize, because the people that you're dealing with can be so highly manipulative or volatile or both. And the point that she's trying to make is this is at the point where MCC has come in and they're now cutting their overtime, and they're not making the money that they used to, and it's like you're treating us like fast food workers. You're starting to pay us like fast food workers, and you're not recognizing the talent that it takes to run a prison successfully and non-violently, and it all goes through one ear and out the other. And I'll tell you, she really was the reason why that has stuck with me through multiple seasons, and I'm bringing it up now, is because I see it every day. I see people who really fail at times to try to understand the people that they're dealing with, and they expect them to be automatons, and it breeds a bit of conflict between the mental health department and detention, because detention kind of sees things in this one frame where this person is being belligerent, and then it's like, no, this person is mentally ill. Your whole approach has to change. Now, that's not always the case, and sometimes I absolutely see it the way detention sees it. Sometimes there are people in detention who recognize mental illness when it's, right there in front of their face. But it's those other times that really make life difficult. And I was glad to see that portrayed in Orange Is the New Black. And then, of course, they got rid of them all anyway. They all walked or got fired or whatever. And then we had all the bad guards come in, and that brought us to where we are now.
Well, and bravo bringing up Suzanne, because look at how much that very failing to kind of appreciate what guards bring to this environment. Look at the effect it's had on her over the years.
Right.
I kind of didn't realize it until this season, just sort of how transformed she really, a character we're really looking at. We're looking at someone who started off really innocent and childlike. And now you see her kind of becoming more grounded in reality, but sort of in the most depressing possible way.
I'm just looking at Uza Aduba's awards because I'll tell you what, I was never the hugest fan of Suzanne. She served her purpose, and certainly I appreciated the actress' portrayal of her. She's phenomenal. But this season, she's still not my favorite character, but she probably gives the best performance out of anybody on that show. Uza Aduba as Suzanne is fucking phenomenal. And I was like,
absolutely.
I hope she's won some awards, and I'm looking at them now, and she's certainly been nominated. First of all, everything she's ever worked or won or been nominated for was in Orange Is the New Black.
I think it's because it was her major TV debut.
Yeah, maybe.
I know she had a theater background prior to this.
Yeah, it looks like on TV she was on one episode of Blue Bloods, and she was in a TV film How to Live Like a Lady in 2013. So yeah, I would say it's Orange Is the New Black is what put her in the limelight.
Yeah, it really was, and in a way, you have to think of it in terms of the fact that in the first season we rarely heard her referred to as Suzanne by anyone except for the other black prisoners. To everybody else, she was Crazy Eyes. she was kind of reduced to caricature. And it wasn't until the second season when she was played, manipulated, molded, whatever term you want to use, by V, that she sort of came into focus even further. She became fleshed out. She became not just a complete character, but she became a person. And that has continued every season to the point where we don't even hear her referred to as Crazy Eyes anymore. It's the same way almost nobody, I don't even know this, but almost nobody refers to Doggett as Pennsatucky.
Right.
Which is another one. My God, so much credit to Taryn Manning.
Oh, we definitely need to talk about her storyline in this, because it was one of my favorites. I thoroughly enjoyed what they did with Doggett in the season. Up to the point that she returned to the prison. Then after that, it's kind of she's just there. But that whole idea. Well, let me. You were in the middle of something. I won't let you go back to it. But yeah, we got to come.
No. My point was pretty much made.
Okay.
And that just simply is that Uzo has brought so much depth to the character that is she still played for laughs? Yes, certainly, absolutely, and she always will be. She's always kind of going to be this sweet, bless her heart woman child. But at the same time, we've seen that innocence melt away little by little by little, to the point where she's kind of on the heartbreaking side of sanity and lucidity so many times now.
By contrast, those first few minutes of episode 1 where she's hallucinating, I wanted to throw myself out a window. I was like, oh God, come on! I think it was more of just impatience and anticipation for what happened after the riot. I gotta see what happens, and we're doing this shit here. Stop being artsy. Show me the shoe.
I thought it was well done.
Oh, of course it was. I just look. It's like Robert Winfrey and I say all the time. Just because something is well done doesn't mean you have to like it. But we've talked about any number of things. Let me talk about Doggett since it was brought up, and then we must talk about the sisters. I will not let this show end without talking about the sisters. What I loved about Doggett is when we see her flashbacks earlier in the series. She's letting people do her in the butt for fucking Mountain Dew. She just has no self-worth. And her arc, and again, she started off as this villain character, this over-the-top religious zealot villain character that was kind of a caricature of that type of person, to the point that it's almost insulting to anyone who is, of the pro-life stance. Mm. And a beatdown and a rebellion later, she's this highly relatable character. I mean, they really rehabilitated her character when she befriended Boo, and made her very likable. To the point that now you see her. Now she's on the outside. She's escaped from prison. She's trying to make a life for herself, and she's with this guy who's probably going to kill her. He's going to lose his temper one too many times, and this is going to end badly for her. And it's like, if this had happened a few seasons back, she might have stayed with the guy until she inevitably ended up dead. But she's actually got a sense of self-worth now, and she realizes that she doesn't deserve to be manhandled and beat on. And I love that about that element to it, that, she's... And what by the same token, what the character says is true. He was like, "Look, I'm not a bad guy. I have a temper, and I'm trying. The situations are stressful, and he's, and he's handling it poorly. But I think the writing was such that you could see it his way. Now, ultimately, he's you're not supposed to put your hands on a woman, or really any other human being, outside of a combat sport. But he does. It happens. He's a bad dude, and you're rooting against him. But because this is such good writing, there's that little bit of I kind of see his point. I get it. Still shouldn't be abusing Doggett. It's plain and simple. And I also like the fact that the other guard, saw what was happening and was like, you know what, I need to wash my hands of this entire situation. Lots of luck. It just walks away and goes back to the prison.
Right. I didn't think a whole lot of Taryn Manning as an actress before this series, and I think I owe part of that to just having not seen very much that she had been in. I mean, I was aware of her. I knew she was somebody who played fictional characters and things, but that was about it. And you really hit it. You nailed it. She took a character that started out as a joke butt, as over the top parody as anything could possibly be. In terms of fucking Republicans, am I right? And actually, she had a brief moment where she went absolutely pants on head, nanners off the deep end, and really almost started to take things way, way too far in her war against Chapman. But then the very next season, she comes right back, and all of a sudden you find yourself, of all possible reactions, rooting for her.
Yeah.
You're kind of pulling for her because you realize, I kind of didn't expect to see you just really trying to get your shit together. Good for you. Keep it up. I want to see you go down this road.
Let's talk about the Little Debbie murderers, the Denning sisters, I believe they are called.
Oh yes, let's.
Yes, we have Henny Russell as Carol Denning, contemporary Carol Denning. Just for and giggles, Ashley Jordan plays young Carol Denning. Who, what a cutie, that one. And then you have Barb Denning, as played by Mackenzie Phillips of One Day at a Time fame. Good to see she's still working. So here we have, feuding sisters, competitive sisters, angry sisters, who, because of the machinations of Frida and their own inability to get along with one another, have created warring factions between their two blocks, which end with them killing each other in a broom closet, as even their plot to kill Frida unravels at their feet, and they decide to tear each other's heads off. Let me say this. I love them as characters. I thought they were a great addition to the cast. I thought they made for great foils. I'm glad they're dead. Like, I don't think I could stand another season of the two of them.
So say we fucking all.
Yeah, just go ahead and give your thoughts on the two of them.
Oh my god, what an entertaining pair of feuding, fighting siblings. I will admit there was a moment when I was kind of intrigued by the kind of fleeting arc when Carol seemingly was hell-bent on getting sober and staying that way. That was a bit amusing. Obviously, as we now know, was never meant to last. wasn't meant to be. Barb, I don't think we saw fleshed out quite as much.
No, she kind of bullied really the season villain in this thing is Madison. Barb kind of relegates herself to bullying Madison around.
Yeah, Madison kind of emerges as the main big bad over the course of the season. Doesn't start out that way, although it's kind of hinted at from the beginning. Like, keep an eye on this one.
Yeah,
this is the one you really have to be nervous about. But
she's going to be interesting because she still has the respect of that block, and now there's no leader. I've got to imagine she rises to that position of authority. By the way, just as an aside, there's an actress in this thing who's one of her lackeys, Alice Kremelberg, who's from my hometown, Long Island, though she's half my age. She was born in 1990. She plays Nicole Eckelkamp. For one of the Stooges, for one of the lesser parts, she has one of the funniest fucking lines in the entire season. They've switched roommates, and she's like, "Oh, and by the way, I like to shit naked." Dude,
yes.
I couldn't stop laughing. I was howling, and then later on when they do the bit with the sheets and she shits in the laundry, and they're all looking at her like, "Why do you have to get naked?" And she's like, "Because I do." And then, whatever her explanation is, I was in tears, and I'm like, I'm now obsessed with this actress. This is so damn funny to me. Anyway, back to. Did I lose you?
No, just I'm remembering the "I like to shit naked" line, and yes, I'm quickly realizing, oh God, you're right. It is hilarious.
But just that whole group of people there, because you get to know Barb a little bit more in her interactions with Nikki. Carol is just sort of sneering at the bridge table for most of the season, and she's mean to Madison. I said earlier that Madison's a much more interesting character because while she's clearly the villain, and she's out to get our hero Piper, and she's a driving force of a lot of negativity that happens in that prison. Her episode where they showed you her flashback to where. People are calling her partisan, and then and then she's bullied even at the
even the
youth
teacher
camp.
does it. My God,
right. Yeah, she's fucking Meg from Family Guy. Shut up, Meg.
Yeah, good comparison.
And then she goes to the youth camp where she's bullied there too because she's trying to impress people, and everyone can see through it. She's pretty transparent, and so in an effort to try to impress people, she sets a girl on fire. I'll be curious to see what happened after that to her. I mean, clearly she, it landed in prison, but I can't imagine it was a direct route. That
to me was the true Meg moment.
Yeah. Shut up, Meg.
How will I win friends and influence people? I'm going to set someone merrily ablaze.
Yeah. Not even merrily, incompetently. It was an accident. The other lieutenant I didn't find nearly as interesting. I mean, she's a Hispanic lesbian. And she used to be a pimp.
Yeah.
You can't see it, but I'm currently shrugging.
Oh, you mean Daddy?
Yeah. I didn't find her as enthralling or interesting as a character as many of the other. I mean, look, say nothing about Orange is the New Black. This is a colorful cast. And I don't mean that racially. There are a lot of interesting fleshed out characters. This one about as dry as one can get. She could have fallen off the tree in any one of the episodes of The Shield as, Latin thug number 5 and, wouldn't have made a difference to me.
No, they didn't do much with her. Not at all. I don't know if they ever intended to, or if she was just kind of meant to be a little bit of a one-off that's going to be quickly forgotten. But I mean, they did try to give her own flashback, so that tells me they had some investment in her, I suppose.
I'm sure the writers and Jenji Kohan thought she was more interesting than she ended up being.
It's, I don't know. She kind of reminded me a little bit of Ruby Rose's one season on Orange.
Ah, yes, our titular Batwoman in the Arrowverse now.
Yeah. In terms of, which by the way, brief aside, hey, latter-day DC fanboys, I'm afraid I have some tragic news for you. She was always gay. That's been a thing. That's not a contrivance.
This isn't turning Spider-Man gay. She's always been gay. Is that what we're saying?
No, literally, that character has the gay.
That reminds me of Weeds. Are you one of the Jewish? So good. Anyway, just to take things to their natural conclusion here. I'm more curious to see what happens with Madison Battison in the next season than I am anything having to do with Daddy. That's kind of it for me. I've really, really enjoyed this season. Before we start to close out, I think my last thoughts here are just I want to talk about the guards for a minute. I was starting to say this to you on Facebook, and I said, let me wait for the show. I don't want to waste it in Messenger. But what I liked about the first few seasons of Orange is the New Black is how the guards were. The guards recognize that they have an impossible task, and they deal with really shitty people, but let's focus on that word people for just a moment. That's what they are. And so, you have to find that fine line between they're awful, but they're people. And then they got rid of all of those characters except for Loosecheck, and they brought in a bunch of thugs, and then we had Lobster. We're back to where we started with the guards, where some of them are a little more masochistic than others, but ultimately, like I loved Alvarez, and I loved what was her name? The heavyset one.
She was interesting right off the bat.
She really was. I can't find the character's name here without doing some digging, but overall, like I said, I liked what the one CO said about why they do fantasy inmate. I liked the fact that Alvarez made a point of saying, "Do not interfere, do not create situations that are going to give you points. That's cheating." And when that one character does it, he's like, "Fix it before you get written up." Like they understood the power that they had, and they were trying to create. This is sort of an eggs and omelet situation. In order to create the omelet, you have to break a few eggs. And so, are they being ethically sketchy? Yeah. Some might say for the greater good. And that's sort of one of those, it's a shitty world, but you got to be pragmatic sort of way of looking at that. But in general, I like the characters. They were likable characters because the last couple of seasons, the guards weren't even likable. They might as well have walked around in stormtrooper outfits.
Well, yeah, they were the newbies who kind of weren't as ingrained in the culture as their predecessors were.
Right. They were. I think the story with them was they were vets, and and they were given the jobs in the prison and allowed to live on campus, as part of like a program of hiring vets and reintegrating them into society, which definitely said a lot. I remember there being a lot of articles and reviews about that season of Orange is the New Black. Going, what are we saying about our soldiers here? But that we've had that discussion. I'm not going to have it again. But like I said, you brought up with Glow that there's this tendency in a Jenji Kohan show to sort of introduce something, let it float there for a minute, and then it just flies off into the atmosphere, and you're like, wait, I wanted more of that. What happened there? And this season, that was McCullough. I wanted there to be so much more McCullough and her wrestling with her post-traumatic stress disorder from the riot. And you got a hint of it here and there, and it feels like they tried to resolve it with her and Maria confronting each other on the kickball field, and like the big resolution was she was willing to trust Maria in that moment. But still, you get a little bit of it at the beginning, then you get the bit with her and the cigarette in the bathroom, and then they do it again later on, and then that's it. That's all there is to it. I'm like, dude, you just really introduced some serious grist for the mill here, and then you almost as immediately abandoned it. Very frustrating. John? Did we lose Sean? Okay, let's pause this for a second.
Yeah, we're seemingly always content to just go with, half the equation. It's good enough. We did pretty much a solid C job fleshing some of these ideas out. Okay, let's move right. No. You have a chance to build a breakout story. These shows always seem to want to actually seem to say something, but they never entirely commit to it.
I was gonna say, if you need to cut something to give McCullum more time, cut Lorna's stuff. Of all the characters they kept from the first season, I really didn't need to see more of her. I thought, her and the stuff with Vinny and everything, and her, playing that line between completely nuts and just a bit eccentric, bit Italian, bit eccentric, was like, all right, we've done it, we've seen it. You can go to Ohio with Boo and the Lice.
Yeah, Lorna has really kind of unfortunately turned a wrong corner from being kind of interesting, fairly cute, somewhat entertaining, to now just being sort of, why are you really even here?
Yeah.
What is even the point?
Anything else about the guards? Like I said, I like the Alvarez character. I like what they did with the heavyset one. And I thought it was funny when the sisters killed themselves, and her reaction is, "Yes, I won. We need a cart here." It's good stuff.
My kind of last reaction would be, guys, you still have time to really go whole hog on McCullough next season. Don't forget about her.
I'm going to let you have the last word here. There's a couple of things that we didn't touch on. We didn't touch on the thread that's still out there that they still need to deal with for the next season, and that is the immigration centers in Port Blanca. We didn't really touch on anything having to do with Red. So I'm going to leave it to you, Sean, to kind of close this out here with anything we haven't talked about that you wanted that it was important to discuss about the season.
Not really. We hit about everything. In terms of Red, this has got to be probably, I think, maybe the first time since we started the show when she started to feel a little bit stale.
Yeah.
There just wasn't really anything to her. It's just kind of the same thing we've been seeing season after season, except that her actual power has just steadily eroded each time.
Yeah, well, she has none now. And I tell you what, Red kind of took over as the role of Piper, in that at least Piper, after she reunited with Voss, became likable again. And, I really didn't find her to be utterly contemptible as I had in the past. I found that to be Red. To where even if you think about like the Nancy Botwins and the Pipers, where they're set up to make the worst decision possible. You're there, you're at the finish line, you're about ready to cross, you're gonna win, and you turn around and just start peeing for some reason, and everyone runs past you. Like, the fuck?
You turn around and just start peeing for some reason.
Like, I don't understand how you made that decision. It doesn't connect to anything happening around you, and you've now lost everything. What the fuck is wrong with you, Piper? Nancy? I'm sure at some point, Alison Brie's character from Glow.
Oh yeah. You know, Ruth is going to have that moment at some point.
Yes, she's gonna be at the finish line. She's gonna look to her left, see Piper. Look to her right, see Nancy, and just whip it out and pee. Right into a coffee cup. As she crosses back from Tijuana. That's the episode I'm on, by the way. Anyway, this show has been brought to you by Weeds. Weeds. It's been over for quite a while now. Anyway, so that all right. So I guess if there's nothing else, like I said, I'm at this point. Red has sort of fallen from grace, and that was what I was getting to. When she takes the opportunity, instead of seeing her grandchildren and reconnecting with her family, to instead strangle Frida and get promptly thrown in the shoe, I was like, all right. I didn't think you could get dumber than Piper, but you've managed to succeed. Congratulations.
And I say that with no joy, because I've enjoyed Kate Mulgrew on this show so much.
Oh no! There's nothing against Kate Mulgrew on this. I mean, this is a phenomenal performance by her too. I mean, all of them do an excellent job. I don't think there's anybody on here that I've said, you're a terrible actress, I don't know why you're here. Everybody does phenomenal performances. It's a lot of times it's my issues with this show stem from the writing, and probably the writing alone, when there are issues. So, all right, that's our discussion on Orange is the New Black Season 6. Orange is the New Black Season 7 will probably come out once again at the end of July. They've tended to, if I'm remembering correctly, it tends to be the June, July-ish era around there that the show rears its head, and Netflix likes to keep things on a fairly steady-ish schedule. So, with that said, Monday, if you get your third helping of Sean and Mark in a row, we're going to do an on trial for Dances with Wolves, and if I remember correctly, you are prosecuting. Is that right?
I am indeed.
All right. Yep, I'm defending.
I am prosecuting this bloated slab of Oscar bait.
Oh, terrific. You can also catch Jesse and I review Bleeding Through, Love Will Kill All, to 1/3 of a podcast reviewing Christopher Robin, as I stopped the recording and not just the music on Tuesday, and we lost 2/3 of the show. That's all right. You didn't miss anything special. We yelled at critics. We always yell at critics. They were just as dumb this week as they were last week, and they will be next week. Jesse and Pat did a source material on Thor's The Reigning and Gods and Men. And our feature right now, our featured podcast on the Rattledge Broadcasting Network Facebook page, is our Screaming Boy show, where we looked at the firing of James Gunn, and we called that one The Day Laughter Died. Next week, again, I'll be absent from source material, so there'll be 100% less fart jokes. But you'll find Jesse and Jason Teasley talking Spider-Man Threat Level. Our last summer movie we'll be reviewing on Damn You Hollywood is The Meg, and we'll close out that week with Kruish Khan, 9 Years of Blood. That's what I got going on. Sean, do your plugs and take us out.
Follow me on Twitter at Comer Codex. Thank you, as always, all of you, for downloading the show, listening, commenting, subscribing, anything that you do to support the Rattledge Broadcasting Network. I've been around this place for a while. God damn, it feels like home to me, and hopefully always will. Stay tuned for lots more good stuff coming in the future from all of us. And until next we meet again, I'm Sean. You're not. Never dull your colors for someone else's canvas, and have a lovely evening.
Be well, be safe, and behave, everybody.
Amazon has everything for back to school. Zebra lunchbox? Check. Cool Adidas gear like t-shirts, shoes, and backpacks? Check. Triceratops folders and pencils? Check. Laser Cat t-shirts? Check. Get your back-to-school shopping done now at Amazon.com/back-to-school and enjoy free shipping on millions of items. No need to leave your home or hassle with crowds. Amazon.com. No better place to get everything back to school from A to Z.